You obviously got Knicks fans very riled up throughout the game. At one point, there was a colorful chant directed towards you. It seems as though you may be New York's newest villain. Is that kind of the ultimate compliment?
I guess I'm nowhere near Trae Young level, though.
The conversation around this series looks very different now. Just when it seemed like the Spurs were running out of answers, they finally delivered the kind of performance that changes the mood of an entire matchup. One win was all they needed to stay in the fight, and they got it. After dropping the first two games because of costly mistakes and missed opportunities, San Antonio showed that this series still has plenty left in it. The Knicks have played solid basketball, but the Spurs have spent much of this matchup battling their own errors as much as their opponent. This time, they pushed through those problems and walked into Madison Square Garden with a huge road victory. They still have work to do before fully swinging home court advantage back in their favor, but this was the response they desperately needed. For the first time in the series, there was real momentum on their side, and it started with getting Victor Wembanyama involved right away. The Spurs kept attacking through pick-and-roll actions, putting Wembanyama in positions where he could score near the basket. Early dunks and easy finishes helped him find a rhythm quickly. That's been the formula all postseason. When he sees the ball go through the hoop early, his confidence rises, his energy changes, and the entire offense starts to look sharper. When he gets off to a slow start, you can often see him become more hesitant and pass up quality opportunities. By making Wembanyama the focal point early, everything else opened up. That approach helped create space and opportunities for Stephon Castle, who exploded for 18 first-half points. His scoring punch was a major reason the Spurs stayed within striking distance whenever the Knicks tried to build momentum during the first half.
Clearing the mind, can you tell us what you drew? Was that video of you drawing in the park real?
I didn't see it. I drew the statue of that park. I don't know.
Julian Champagnie chipped in 12 points, while De'Aaron Fox finished with 12 points and 8 assists. A lot of fans would like to see Fox knock down a few more shots, and that's fair. But when the pressure was at its highest, he delivered the shot that mattered most. That's exactly why players like Fox are trusted in big moments, and why teams invest heavily in stars who can stay calm when everything is on the line. Even with all the ups and downs in this series, this was easily San Antonio's strongest performance so far. What's frustrating for Spurs fans is knowing how close things have been. A few different decisions, a few cleaner possessions, and this could very easily be a 2-1 series lead for San Antonio instead of the position they're in now. The first two games were filled with problems that kept showing up at the worst times. The offense became stagnant, turnovers piled up, rush shots, hurt possessions, and there wasn't enough action being run to keep the defense guessing. That's why criticism has landed on Mitch Johnson after the losses. At the same time, when the team gets it right, he deserves credit for that too. If praise is earned, it should be given just as quickly as criticism. The difference in Game 3 was impossible to miss. In Game 1, the Spurs shot just 1-1 for 4-3 from deep. In Game 2, Victor Wembanyama attempted only 5 shots in the first half. This time, the approach changed. The Spurs made a clear effort to feature their star early and often, and Wembanyama finished the night with 18 shot attempts. That shift helped set the tone for everything that followed. Personally, I still think there's another level the Spurs can reach when it comes to getting Victor Wembanyama involved. Even though he was much more active in this game, it still feels like there are opportunities being left on the table. When Wembanyama is engaged for all 48 minutes, everything changes. Defenses have to adjust, spacing looks different, and the entire flow of the game starts to shift in San Antonio's favor. His impact goes far beyond just the points he scores. Dylan Harper finished with 18 shot attempts, and one thing that stands out about him in this series is how fearless he has been. He hasn't looked intimidated by the moment at all. Every game he's attacking, looking for opportunities, and playing with a confidence that jumps off the screen. That kind of mentality is something every team wants, especially in a high-pressure playoff environment. At the same time, if Harper is getting 18 shots, it's fair to argue pretty simple throughout this series. When Wembanyama is heavily involved, good things tend to happen. That's why Stephon Castle's performance was so encouraging. He played with aggression, confidence, and urgency, and that's exactly the approach the Spurs need from him for the rest of this matchup. One word really stood out in this game: urgency. That's been one of the biggest keys to success for the Spurs throughout this series. When they play with energy, purpose, and a sense that every possession matters, they look like a completely different team. Coming into Madison Square Garden down 2-0, there was naturally going to be extra intensity, and it showed from the opening minutes. The ball moved with much better pace, players weren't standing around waiting for the clock to run down, and the offense felt far more connected.
Daily news. I mean, the end of game two was ridiculous. You had Wemby throwing the ball off his teammate. You had a wild end. And just when you look at the film, what are things that you guys need to clean up to be prepared for game three?
I think playing better with the lead that we had in the 14th, the 14-point lead. The way they fought back and took the lead is just a credit to who they are. Us staying composed helped us win that game, but we do need to be able to finish it.
Instead of spending entire possessions dribbling the air out of the ball before forcing a difficult shot, the Spurs were creating opportunities through movement and quick decisions. Now, there were a few possessions late in the game where they used most of the shot clock before taking a three, but that's a completely different situation. When you're protecting a multi-possession lead in the final minutes, using clock and forcing the defense to work makes perfect sense. That's smart game management. The real problem comes when that approach becomes the entire offensive identity for 4 quarters. That's when possessions stall, scoring dries up, and games start slipping away. The Spurs are at their best when they're moving the ball, getting Victor Wembanyama involved in actions near the basket, creating open looks, and attacking before the defense gets set. When they play that way, they're far more difficult to stop, and that's the version of this team that gives them the best chance to keep winning in this series. There's still one area of the Spurs' offense that stands out as a major concern, and that's the lack of transition scoring. Finishing with just 5 fast break points is surprising when you look at the talent on this roster. With playmakers like De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, and Stephon Castle, this team should be creating far more opportunities before the defense has a chance to get organized. Maybe part of the credit belongs to the Knicks for getting back quickly and setting up their defense. But even with that in mind, San Antonio has to do a better job of pushing the tempo. Throughout the postseason, some of their best stretches have come when they're attacking early in possessions and forcing opponents to react instead of letting them get comfortable. That's when the Spurs become difficult to contain. For whatever reason, that pace hasn't been nearly as consistent in this series. The Spurs have looked much more effective when they're grabbing rebounds, getting the ball up the floor immediately, and turning every possession into a race. When defenses aren't set, driving lanes open up, shooters find cleaner looks, and the offense flows naturally. Dylan Harper has been one of the few players consistently looking to create those opportunities. Whether the previous possession ended with a make or a miss, he kept attacking, kept putting pressure on the defense, and kept looking for chances to get to the rim. That aggressive mindset fits exactly what the Spurs want to be offensively because transition basketball has been one of their biggest strengths all season. What's interesting is that while the Knicks have played solid basketball, it still feels like the Spurs have left a lot of opportunities on the table. The biggest story of the series hasn't necessarily been New York dominating. Instead, many of San Antonio's problems have come from mistakes, missed chances, and stretches where they haven't played to their strengths. That's especially notable with Jalen Brunson having a tougher series than many expected. Jalen Brunson finished this game shooting 1-1 for 2-5, which was a noticeable improvement after going a combined 1-9 for 5-6 across games 1 and 2. The Spurs have clearly built their defensive approach around making someone other than Brunson carry the offense. On paper, that strategy makes sense. The challenge is that New York has several players capable of stepping up when given the opportunity. Throughout this series, different Knicks players have answered the call. OG Anunoby has been a constant problem. Karl Anthony Towns has had major stretches of impact, and in this game, players like Josh Hart and Jordan Clarkson provided important contributions. That's what makes the Knicks difficult to defend. Even when Brunson isn't completely taking over, someone else seems ready to fill the gap. The good news for San Antonio is that not every supporting player is likely to repeat those performances night after night. Hart, for example, isn't known as a high-volume three-point shooter, and teams are often willing to give him more space than they would other perimeter threats. That's why defensive matchups involving him have been such a big topic throughout the series. Still, the bigger issue for the Spurs has been the production they're allowing from players like Anunoby. He has consistently found ways to hurt them, and his 2 8-point performance in this game was another example. If San Antonio wants to turn this series around, limiting those kinds of outings has to be a priority. There was at least one encouraging sign. The Spurs were much more physical with Karl Anthony Towns and did a better job making him work for everything. Unlike games 1 and 2, he wasn't able to control the action in the same way. That adjustment played a major role in helping San Antonio stay competitive and ultimately come away with the win. A big reason for the Spurs' success in this game was Victor Wembanyama making his presence felt on both ends of the floor. When your best player is actively involved, the entire team benefits. That's been one of the most puzzling parts of this series. San Antonio has looked its best whenever the offense runs through Wembanyama, and this game was another example of that. The Spurs finally committed to getting him involved consistently, and the result was their first win of the series. The formula doesn't seem overly complicated. When Wembanyama is engaged, the offense has more structure, the defense becomes more disruptive, and everyone around him gets better opportunities. Game 3 reinforced that point in a major way. Another positive was the way the Spurs protected the basketball. They finished with only 8 turnovers, which is a huge improvement against a Knicks defense that thrives on creating chaos and turning mistakes into points. Taking care of possessions is one of the fastest ways to give yourself a chance to win in a playoff series like this. At the same time, there are still areas that need attention. The Spurs scored 44 points in the paint, but there were opportunities for even more. Continuing to attack the basket and put pressure on the defense should remain a priority. Rebounding is another concern. New York grabbed 12 offensive rebounds, and those extra possessions can completely change the flow of a game. Too often, when the Knicks missed a shot, their players seemed quicker to react and fight for the loose ball. The Spurs have to match that effort consistently. Securing defensive rebounds and finishing possessions cleanly could end up being one of the biggest factors in the rest of this series. When it came to rebounding, Dylan Harper stood out in a big way. Even if the final box score doesn't fully show it, his effort on the glass was impossible to miss. He attacked rebounds with energy, urgency, and determination, constantly putting himself in position to secure extra possessions. That's the kind of effort that can change a game, and it's impressive that a rookie is setting that standard in such an important playoff series. The rest of the roster needs to follow that example. Wembanyama, in particular, has to continue making his presence felt on the boards. To be fair, his defensive responsibilities aren't easy. Guarding Karl Anthony Towns often pulls him away from the basket because Towns is such a threat from three-point range. That naturally creates challenges when it comes to rebounding opportunities. Still, there are moments where Wembanyama can be more aggressive, tracking down loose balls and controlling the paint. The encouraging part is that there were signs of improvement in this game. His activity level looked better, and the overall effort from the team was stronger than what fans saw in the first 2 contests. Keldon Johnson had a mixed performance. There were definitely stretches where he struggled, but he also delivered a few important plays at key moments. Those contributions mattered, especially in a game where every possession carried extra weight. Carter Bryant also had a learning experience. Some of his fouls were the kind that young players make as they adjust to playoff intensity and learn how officials are calling the game. Even Luke Kornet gave the Spurs some solid minutes when called upon. Looking ahead, though, it still feels like Wembanyama's workload is going to be a major factor. If San Antonio wants to keep advancing in this series, they may need their franchise star on the floor for close to 40 minutes a night. The biggest takeaway is that this series is still very much alive. Game 3 showed what the Spurs are capable of when they limit mistakes, take care of the ball, and play with purpose. The Knicks have been a tough opponent, but San Antonio proved that when they clean up the issues that have hurt them throughout the series, they have every chance to keep this battle going. Now it's a 2-1 series, and the entire outlook has changed. Just a few days ago, there were real questions about whether the Spurs could find a way back into this matchup after dropping the first 2 games. They walked into Madison Square Garden facing enormous pressure, and instead of folding, they delivered their best performance of the series. They cleaned up many of the mistakes that had been hurting them, trusted their stars, and came away with a massive road win. Suddenly, this series feels completely different. One more victory changes everything. Tie it at 2-2, and all of the pressure shifts right back to New York. That's why Game 4 is so important. That's the blueprint moving forward. Going into Game 4, the Spurs don't need to reinvent anything. Keep the ball moving, continue attacking the paint, create efficient scoring opportunities, stay aggressive on the glass, limit the turnovers, and make sure Wembanyama stays at the center of everything they do offensively and defensively. If they can repeat that formula, there's every reason to believe they can even this series and turn the pressure all the way up. We're in for a huge game, and the next chapter of this series could change everything. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you never miss any of our NBA coverage. Every like helps the channel grow, every subscription helps us bring you more content, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Can the Spurs tie this series at 2-2, or will the Knicks take control again? Thanks for watching Ball Stories, and we'll be back after the next game with another full breakdown and reaction. Peace!